Hello and welcome to Rule of Carnage, a podcast about developing better spreadsheet routines for getting through the goddamn fulfillment process of running a Kickstarter. Glenn, why didn't you tell me about the spreadsheets? We had a series of conversations about making a Kickstarter, and all of that was very lovely, and it was filled with hope and joy and potential, and potentially people giving you money and the fame and riches that come with Kickstarter. And then I got a little taste of it during the setup of the Kickstarter, but then after the Kickstarter, the crushing reality of the spreadsheet munging arrived, and every day there is a new transformation of data from one data format into another. Someone needs their CSV inserted somewhere else. And I'm almost there with the Crawling Chaos, my role-playing game of one player and multiple GMs, wherein you usher a narrator towards their eldritch doom. That is in the phase where I've got all the books printed. That was the easy bit. And I'm trying to get through I've collected many backers. Thank you if you are listening, have provided their information through the GameFound Pledge Manager. We discussed Pledge Managers on an earlier episode, and I went with GameFound. So people have provided their addresses and paid their shipping, and in some cases their taxes. And so those people are in a state where I have their books, I have envelopes, although buying envelopes turned out to take a couple of goes. I have envelopes, I have books, I have their addresses. Now I need to find a way to feed them into the Royal Mail thing, and I've been, chatting with GameFound to make sure I do the right thing with the IOSS number and making sure that I understand who exactly is transmitting that information to the requisite, authorities on the other end. And not to go into very specific details, but like I'm using Royal Mail's business portal, and I think that is the thing that will transmit it, because I'll feed some numbers in and, have to set things up right. But that means you have to set everything up correctly, and you have to make sure that all the information is inserted and so forth. So yeah, I was going to use some other services for this initially, because I was going to use GameQuest to do fulfillment, but I ballsed up the Kickstarter for Crawling Chaos, which was very much the point of running a small Kickstarter. I will not be ballsing that up on Space Kits. No doubt I will balls up something new and exciting. But yeah, so in the fulfillment phase of this Kickstarter now, I guess we haven't really done the sort of like, what was it like to run a Kickstarter? I think it was many of the things that you've said, which is that during the Kickstarter, there was lots of moments where I wanted to change something or felt like I hadn't done something right and I should maybe reconsider something. And Glenn's voice was booming loud in my ear saying, don't trust Kickstarter fever brain. Like, don't trust that guy. So I didn't really change anything. I put one additional tier up because people wanted some digital bundles. And then the fulfillment for digital goods was the first thing that I wrangled after the Kickstarter was closed. The other thing I want to say about the Kickstarter was I don't know why, but I'd sort of earmarked the month of the Kickstarter as filled with Kickstarter things, but didn't really have to do anything. Slightly more work on Space Kits. There's a bit more traffic in terms of comments and people wanting to know things and so forth. But actually what happened was this like psychic space opened up where like I was doing work because there was a Kickstarter live. So now I had some space to do some other stuff. And I did quite a lot of Space Kits work during that. And I thought, oh, great. This means that when the Kickstarter for Space Kits is live, I'll probably have quite a lot of brain space to do the layout of the rulebook, which is a big, long-running task that I have to do. And that has actually been true for the last couple of weeks. I've been working on the layout, and it's been going just fine. So that was surprising. I guess for some reason, I just thought that running a Kickstarter would take more of my day than it would.
Yeah, I think there's like an idea of the ideal of Kickstarter that it's this sort of conversation and back and forth between the creator and the backers, and that there's input and etc. etc. It's very, very rare that I think that actually turns out to be the case. And I would say that probably the average Kickstarter backer never looks in the comments section.
Yeah.
Surprising number of Kickstarter backers aren't even aware of the existence of a comment section. And that's why, like, you know, I said sort of before crawling chaos, and I think that this is potentially a good idea. It can be a good idea to sort of have planned out some updates that you're going to do no matter what. That
Yeah.
can be a way of like, you know, sparking a bit of conversation or a back and forth, you know, about a new thing that you've got available. I think you just did the teleporter blue update for space Gits, so that's a perfect example where you've got a physical thing that you can show and focus on, and you had like pulled apart shots of the Portaloo and it painted in its different ways. And it's like that's great if you've got a mini like that and a really like visual sort of easy to show mini. But you know,
Well,
anybody.
and for Crawling Chaos, it was the same was true of the solo mode. Like,
Hmm.
I took the time to record a solo mode demonstration video, and I also like pulled apart the rules and was like, here's some of the tables that you'll be looking at when you. So it's just like trying to zoom into a particular element of the game or aspect, and that wasn't like a reactive thing. I just knew that I would talk about that at some point. I haven't gone as far as like actually planning out, beat for beat what posts there are. I'm a bit more seat in my pants than that. But like on the wall behind me, there are 5 or 6 video ideas for Space Gits that may or may not get made in the next couple of weeks before the campaign closes. We'll just see how the time works out and what I get excited by. But like in general, I think your advice is right that like have some beats that like you don't have to think too much about and aren't like responding to the things that are going on in the comment section.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, what you sort of want to do is to each of your backers shout at them occasionally. Remember, you backed this thing. Why not tell a friend about it? But
Right. Yeah.
if you just put up an update going, remember you backed this thing. Why not tell a friend about it? They'll quickly unsubscribe from your updates and possibly sort of
People
cancel.
don't like directness, do they?
No, cancel, possibly cancel their backing. But if you go, hey, look at this cool thing from this thing you backed. Okay, oh yeah, I did back that thing, and it is cool. I'll tell
Yeah.
my friend about it in the next
Look at
conversation.
this. There's a toilet. It's a toilet.
It's a teleporting toilet. Whoa. But you know, it's ways of
We
like,
were talking about pitching last episode. The teleportaloo was the final moment of my pitch for the game pretty much every time round. It's like, oh yeah, and you can buy all of these miniatures, as part of the Kickstarter, including the teleportaloo, and then finish with the gag, where does the poop go? No one knows. Like hopefully catching like a 9-year-old boy's eye as I use that line to cement the pitch.
yeah, no, it's a nice piece of terrain to have available is the teleporting toilet. But like, you know, fundamentally, sort of throughout the campaign, having their ways of pulling people's attention back to the campaign in a way that is hopefully enjoyable for them and interesting
Mm.
for them. And like, I think a lot of like first time creators think, well, that will be when we hit the big one or another big number, a milestone number of backers. I'll go on my update will be, oh, we've hit 100 backers, we've hit 1,000 backers, whatever.
I think there's also something really like it's obvious to a certain kind of person who's done sales and like or like product positioning, but like I'm really aware that there's quite a lot of Kickstarter like quite a lot of Kickstarter pages and quick Kickstarter updates that are about the Kickstarter and about what is happening with that campaign, which I think loses the fundamental reality that when you are selling a thing to someone, it's always about them. Like it's about the person that is getting the thing and why this is going to be cool for them and why it's going to make them cool. So I've been very leery about like, oh, we've achieved this together. Because actually it's just like, here's what you're going to get. Like, here's this thing that you'll be enjoying. Like, here's how you will be having fun. And just continually making it about the player, about the backer, about the fun that they're going to have. Um,
Mm.
because I think the temptation, particularly as part of this sort of Kickstarter routine, is to be like, well, I'm putting myself on show, and therefore this is about the campaign, and I just don't think that's right.
Mm. No, I do agree to a greater or lesser degree, and I mean, again, it depends on like, you know, if you've got a campaign and you've chosen to do stretch goals, then what you, the backer, are going to get is part of what is happening in the campaign, which
Yeah,
is
I think that's
why.
maybe part of the magic of why stretch goals are so interesting to people.
I think it's why some creators keep going back to stretch goals, even though they are a huge pain in the arse, and more backers are sort of turning against
As
them.
I was getting ready for Space Kits, the a friend down the pub who we play board games with, like every time I would leave of an evening, he would shout after me, "Stretch goals! You need stretch goals!" Shut up! I'm not going to put any stretch goals on.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
only back it if there are stretch goals.
yeah, and I think there are still some backers who obsess over stretch goals and some creators, but I don't think that they're the necessity that they were at a certain point. But yeah, I think what you're saying is true that there's a lot of like running a Kickstarter, which is absolutely nothing happening like whatsoever, other than you sort of clicking refresh on the dashboard and seeing a little red cancellation bob come up. And it's funny because it's
Why don't you love me anymore?
like the thing.
It is an emotional journey.
Yeah, no, it is, and it really depends, like, on how the Kickstarter is doing and your understanding of it and expectation of it. Because it's like, we're having this conversation. We're both sort of in a stage of fulfilling a successful Kickstarter at this point, and like when I launched the SSO expansion, SSO Travelers. I've done so many SSOs now, and not just that, but quite a few pure expansion um Kickstarters. I know they all go in roughly exactly the same shape and have roughly
Did you estimate the back account to within like 5 backers accurately?
well, the thing of it was, I think I mentioned to you that at the time was that for some weird reason Kickstarter wasn't displaying any backers on
Oh God, that was awful. Yeah,
the and so I was I
launch campaign, nothing, no one, crickets.
yeah, no, I was like, well, I know exactly how an SSO expansion does, because at the very least I've got like certain people who, there's like 150 odd people who come back every single time, and have been there for every single campaign.
God bless them.
Yeah, and plenty of them have followed the campaign, and every other time they've been there in like the first
Yeah,
hour or something. And I launched, and like after 2 hours, I went back and it was still on zero, and I was like, well, I know like money's tight at the moment and it's a difficult period of time, but I really wasn't expecting that. And it wasn't until like, I think it was like 6 to 8 hours in or something. And I went to the main page of Kickstarter and realized that all the things that launched around the same time were all showing like 0%. I was like, something's going on here. And I went to
yeah.
my dashboard.
Somebody was wrestling with a database issue somewhere.
Yeah, and the dashboard was showing backers, although the front page of the campaign wasn't, and it was still basically in the place that I was expecting it to be. But
So nerve wracking.
the point is that for me, like Travelers is doing Travelers was so not nerve wracking, because it was like
Mm.
every day I was just swinging by, going like, yeah, it's about the sort of percentage I was expecting. That's fine. This is going to be fine. This is about when it will fund, which is when I was expecting it to fund. And it's going to raise exactly the amount of money I wanted it to, and that was necessary. But that is not the sort of, I think, the usual experience. But
Well, no, and it absolutely wasn't the narrative arc of launching Space Kits, which was like,
mm,
you know, money's about to run out. Will I have to quit my new career and go back to my old career? Like, will anyone like it? Am I making like 20,000 or 100,000? Like, what is
mm,
even going to happen? So yeah, like my experience was much more like the sort of uh the nerve-wracking, like you launch it and then you've no idea, like literally no idea what the like S curve, like I know what the S curve is supposed to look like, but I don't know what the scaling value on it
mm,
was going to be. And I honestly I still don't, I know what the S curve is supposed to look like, so I know where I think I'm going to end up. Um as we're recording this, I am what is it, like 10 days in or something.
mm.
Um so I think I know where it's going to go, but it's still, it's still very exciting and butterfliesy, and
Yeah, and like never look at the kick tracker expectation of where the campaign is
oh
going.
God, what is up with that? Like it's 10x what is reasonable.
I know. It's like it bases it for people who don't know. There's a website called KickTrack.
Does it just base it on like a linear
Yeah,
forecast?
yeah, it does. It
Oh,
assumes like a
so
linear.
stupid.
so for people who don't know, KickTrack is a website where you can track Kickstarters, and it's really useful for like just like apropos nothing in a way. If you think a Kickstarter is a little bit like suspect and you're not sure whether to back it or not, go on KickTrack and look, because it will show you how many backers it's had on each day, and you can match like how many backers there were to the amount of money raised on a particular day, and you can see if there are some suspicious patterns, and it's really handy for that. But like if you're running a Kickstarter, you're going to go by KickTrack and like click it because it gives you
Well, yeah,
the
because you kept mentioning I don't use it as a punter, but you kept mentioning it, so I had a little look at it on Crawling Chaos or something, and it was like, oh, for Crawling Chaos, you're going to make £80,000. Like, what?
yeah.
What?
It has a prediction page where it gives you a little graph showing you like the predicted amount of your Kickstarter and predicts like the amount of money you're going to get. But what KickTrack, for some bizarre reason, has never chosen to bother updating is that all it does is assume that the trend of your current Kickstarter is a dead straight line. And every Kickstarter has a huge first, like the first 2 or 3 days is always going to be your biggest first 2 or 3 days of the campaign. So the KickTrack like projection after day 3 is insane. It assumes you're going to be making like more money than Gloomhaven for your little project, and it gets more and more reasonable and sort of levels out. But it's like,
Right.
yeah, don't look at that prediction if you're running your own Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's
Um,
done.
but yeah, I think like different projects have different expectations, and I think you were certainly in a place where you were figuring out what Mike Hutchinson launching his own minis game on Kickstarter was going to look like and was what it was going to.
Yeah, and I was actually quite pleased that like where I landed with Crawling Chaos was basically where I wanted to land. Like I wanted about 200 backers. I ended up with 360, which was great. Like percentage wise, it was lots bigger than what I was hoping for. But like in real terms, it didn't didn't matter too much one way or the other for the money, and it most importantly, it didn't matter one way or the other too much for like the amount of hassle and potential problems that I was creating for myself with the fact that I didn't know what I was doing with fulfillment, and I was going to have to go through this the first time. And if I was going to have to do like manually loading orders, like, I didn't have 1,000 backers and it wasn't going to be an absolute nightmare. But like, even with the 360 backers I've got, like, I'm dealing with 870 line items of like different items and stuff on the orders, so like there's still a lot of like stuff to figure out and work through and make sure I've got exactly right. And I'm super nervous that like someone in Germany is going to get back to me and just be like, I asked for 2 copies of Rotwalden, why was there only one? And I'm it's just like
Yeah,
getting all of that stuff exactly right is actually really quite a lot more difficult than I had anticipated.
yeah, I think specifically because your first Kickstarter had like 5 different items.
That's right. Yeah. And it wasn't like you just get one of the thing, and do you want the thing? Then here's the thing.
Yes, yeah. So sort of filtering out the different spreadsheets of who's got what. So it's like, so when I fulfill a campaign, I create a different spreadsheet for what's going in the box, and then order it by location, and then you know pack a whole bunch of boxes and do them in batches to the various countries. Just because I don't want to be thinking about what's going into a given box. It's just, okay, I've got 10 empty boxes, all of which need to have one of those go into it, and then
Yeah.
just spend a while sort of
Yeah,
packaging.
that's what I used to do with the Gaslands mail order shop, and it's what I'm doing with this as well. It's like I've got 2 sizes of envelopes, one that just gets the zine and a little flyer, and a slightly larger envelope that gets the 6 zines and the flyer. And at some point, there'll be like some outliers where I have to custom select the objects, but like 80-90% of the orders are just like, do you want A or B? Okay, let me grab an A and stick
Yeah,
this.
yeah. Most people will have gone to one of the standard tiers in the Kickstarter. That's very much sort of why they exist.
Yeah,
Um,
which I mean, it does make me nervous that like the Space Gits Kickstarter is considerably more complicated, has a lot more SKUs in it. But that's why I'm using GameQuest, and I'm going to be paying through the nose for their picking and packing.
Absolutely. And
But it's also like I have chosen to negotiate with Cromlech at their end because they're casting the miniatures, and they can basically they're casting the miniatures to order, and I've asked them to bag them up in like useful groupings so that, like, instead of like the grill cooks gang that you get is actually constructed of like 5 different SKUs from their product line, but we've created a new SKU and it all comes in a little bag. And what the person in the warehouse in London, in Games Quest, wherever they are based in the UK, they'll just have to pick out the bag with the right sort of custom SKU that we've created together, to just try and reduce as much of that as possible. But still, it's going to be very complicated, and there's going to be lots of picking and the occasional mistake here and there. And
yeah, it's why I'm really interested. When I get around to doing the Boards and Black Flags campaign, is that I'm using Aetherworks, who
mm,
have uh, print farms and MDF cutting facilities, so they're going to be manufacturing and packing and sending out, you know, the miniatures and the terrain. And so the only thing that's going to be sent to them is going to be books, which are going to be pretty obvious to sort of package them up. So
mm.
I'm curious to see sort of, because one of the things I was nervous about doing like hub production is, okay, so I've got to find a print farm, getting them to print these things up, and then like send them in like 100 little baggies to whatever the fulfillment company is going to be. And so I'm really relieved that Aetherworks are set up to do that process of the picking and packing and the printing all themselves, to cut down on the potential confusion that's going to create.
Oh, right, because they're actually, they're tearing them off the print plates, and so they'll
Yeah,
know what it is because they just printed it, rather than having to go through what I'm going to have to go through, which is find a clear way to communicate what this object is and
yeah,
which one to pick out of the box.
you have to communicate. Cromlech have to communicate with Games Quest, and the physical thing that Cromlech sends to Games Quest is got to be
Which
easily
actually,
interpretable
yeah,
for.
which gives me anxiety because I've seen a photograph of what they made. He sent me a photograph, like the guy at Cromlech sent me a photograph of like, here's what we're making, and I was like, that's a cute font, but it really is illegible, and like the 3 and the 9 look too similar. Like, could you just use a clearer font? And now I'm getting anxiety. It's like, well, actually, I'd really just like there to be a barcode so that someone in the Games Quest, thing can scan, get the SKU, and that will load in the details that I have loaded into the system that says, yep, this is owned by Mike. It's a Planet Smasher thing. It's a Cromlech object with this code.
I mean, the best I can say in terms of reassurance in relation to Games Quest specifically is like, I did the one of my previous bigger Kickstarters for a bigger SSO expansion with them, and I did playmats with that. And the way that they got the playmats was, you know, in a big pile with a post-it note, like, because there were like 5 different backgrounds to the playmats, and so there's a post-it note that then said the next 5 playmats are SKU blah blah, and then like 10, and then like
Oh
5
man, yeah, that's junk.
a note saying the next 10,
So they didn't
because
have
they
like little sticky labels on them saying what they were or anything. They just,
no, because they
wow.
turned up at my door from an American company that printed the playmats for me, whose name currently escapes me, just in a big box, and so I had to like tie them up and bundle them and label which ones the SKUs myself.
Mm.
And Games Quest got all of that right, so they used
Wow. Yeah,
pretty
very nice.
shonky behavior for
One thing that I invested really quite a small amount of money in, having started this process of fulfilling Kickstarters, is I bought one of those thermal label printers with a
oh
roll of
yeah.
sticky things, so that I can just create barcodes whenever I need. And so like the zines that I was going to send to Games Quest, but I ballsed up and I don't need to anymore, like they all got barcodes on the back so that they could be identified. And that that I think is, I don't know if I'll actually need it in the thing, but it just like gave me the confidence that like if I need to quickly like identify things, that I've got a way of creating silly physical objects and then machine coding them.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I don't know, like the thing that like a task that I've got this coming week is to essentially take everything that's in the Space Gits Kickstarter campaign and recreate it in GameFound. And
Mm.
that's another example of like how much and you know, I'm currently in the process today of taking everything that was in the Crawling Chaos Kickstarter, which I recreated in GameFound. I now have to recreate in um, the Royal Mail business portal, because everything, you know, nothing is in a standard format, and they all need to like, if royal I need Royal Mail to understand what my products are, so that when I import the list of customer orders, it can connect them all together and, you know, add up the weights and so forth.
Mm.
And so yeah, I started the setup of the game found, you know, configuration after I finished the campaign on Crawling Chaos, because I thought, oh well, I need to import the backers, so I can't do the setup on GameFound until the Kickstarter is over. That turned out to be nonsense, and I lost 2 weeks, because actually what you need to do is set up everything exactly the same as the Kickstarter campaign, set it up exactly the same in GameFound. So just like when you feed the spreadsheet into Royal Mail, when you feed the spreadsheet that you got out of Kickstarter into GameFound, it can wire everything together, because you've already taught GameFound, you know, what your SKUs are and what your products are and what it all means.
Yes.
So that was a point of learning. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm deliberately going to like stop working on the Space Gits layout for a day, so that I can go ahead and set the GameFound stuff up, because GameFound needs to do some work on their end to like QA the information, and they're very helpful actually, and like do quite a thorough look at what's going on. Then they have to pass it to their finance team and figure out what the tax implications of each item is and what they would categorize it of, and all that kind of stuff takes, you know, some small number of weeks. And
Mm.
so in order to get Space Gits into Pledge Manager earlier, I just feel like I can do all that work during the campaign and just, you know, just buy myself some elapsed time.
Yeah. Yes, a lot of fulfillment is to do with becoming a master of spreadsheet management and re-putting in the same set of SKU details on three
And yeah, like
times.
creating amazing spreadsheet munging things, and then just wishing there was a way of getting a spreadsheet in, because actually I'm just going to have to type a load of things into these text boxes on, you know, the fourth
Yeah,
website
because
system.
everybody has a slightly different version of the CSV, to be put into their website, and then you have to sort of go back in and move columns and back and forth, and you realize you got the wrong column in the wrong place. And
May I share one highly specific mistake that I made? And this will only be useful to gentle listeners who are considering using GameFound, but I want to share it because it was a bit of a gotcha and it kind of screwed me. So I'd set up the GameFound campaign with all of its different rewards and add-ons and tiers and so forth. And I only really need to use GameFound for the physical backers, because it doesn't have a way of digitally delivering files, which is kind of annoying. I had I known that, would I made another decision, gone with back a kick? I don't know, but it's annoying, because it means that people, and then this is the problem that I got, was that I imported the list of backers to try and get it to work, and I imported the list of backers, and then I realized that I'd made some mistakes, and so I deleted the list, and then I brought them in again, and I did that a few times because I was messing things up, because it's actually really quite finicky. But what I hadn't realized was with GameFound, there are actually two areas of the website, one called orders and one called users.
mm,
And I was only looking at the orders because I was importing orders. You know, people had made an order by backing on Kickstarter, and so I'd imported them. The first time I imported all of my Kickstarter backers, I imported them all and then realized, oh, balls, I've imported all of the £1 backers and the digital only backers, the people who don't need to use GameFound. So I deleted all of those orders. And then I merrily went through and did it 4 or 5 more times until everything was looking good and the postages were working out. And then eventually I launched the GameFound pledge manager and I sent the email out. And it didn't send it to the 200 backers that had pledged physically. It sent it to all 360, including the digital people who I thought I had long deleted. And it turned out that I had been importing orders and deleting orders, but every time you import an order, it creates a user. unless it already has it. And so I didn't know that the first thing that I'd done is created 360 users, and then I created all of these orders and deleted them and created and deleted them. So what happened on launch day was I launched the pledge manager. They sent an email to 360 users, 160 of which didn't have any orders. And when they followed the thing, it just went, I don't know, you haven't got an order, like whatever. And that was a real ball ache because I mean, it only really cost me one person's business. Like somebody was a bit frustrated and needed a refund, and that was absolutely fine because it was my mistake, but it was my mistake born of like, every one of these platforms has a different data model. It has a different way of expressing things. And I simply didn't realize that there was even a thing called a user in their data model. And what I should have done was gone through every tab on every menu, trying to understand how they all connect. But of course, that their person was very helpful, but like they've got 3 years of knowledge of their system and they can't really see what is completely unobvious. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because if anyone was to use GameFound, please be aware that every time you import an order, it also secretly creates a user in the background.
Yeah, because
And users are a really weird name. Like they're not users, they're customers. And
I know, but that's partly because like some of them do or don't have pre-existing GameFound accounts, and
yeah,
etc. etc. And that's there because you can group out people to give them discounts. So if somebody backs for a certain amount of money on Kickstarter, that's then going to get the money off later on GameFound, you can do jiggery and pokery with that sort of thing.
yeah, and GameFound's very powerful platform.
Mm.
No real complaints. I just really got bit by that one because it created a lot of confusion because I sent emails that were meaningless for people who didn't need to receive emails, and when they followed the thing which looked like a thing they had to do to get their game, they didn't get their game and they got an error message. And it's like, well, that's just a frustrating, unprofessional look for me.
Yeah. And there will be people who will have like different email addresses for their Kickstarter account and their GameFound account, which always causes little problems.
We could probably talk about this for another 6 hours. I guess I will just talk briefly about digital fulfillment, which I don't know is something that you've had to do.
On a small scale. I've done it for like STLs for
Oh yeah, right.
and things like that. But
So I chose in this case to use itch.io because itch has a functionality where you can tell it about Kickstarter backers and it creates a special link and there's a couple of options and blah blah blah. And that was mostly good, only that for whatever reason about 5 to 10% of Kickstarter backers just encountered an error where it just didn't know about them, and that was kind of irritating because it was like really inconsistent, and I couldn't figure out. I have not yet figured out if there's a specific condition that has caused it to fail to connect things up. But in every case where someone reached out to me like, I can't get my digital file, I could just create like a specific link for them, and that always worked 100% of the time. So itch was like 90% great as a digital download solution. I haven't tried War Games Vault or Drive Through RPG, so I don't know how they compare. But I have been quietly avoiding using them on the main for my own personal reasons. And I thought that itch looked like a good solution. I truly wish that GameFound, being my pledge manager of choice, had this. They have it on their roadmap somewhere to be able to deliver digital files, but it isn't available right now.
yeah, I know. I find War Game Vault, pretty easy to use. So there's
I
plenty
think
of.
War Game Vault is excellent for miniature games because a lot of people use it as their repository, as their bookshelf,
Mm.
and so it's quite a convenient and sort of polite place to put it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, we are both partway through a couple of different journeys of fulfilling some Kickstarters. So this will probably be the end of the series of Kickstarter conversations. This is sort of the prologue to the previous I think 5 or 6 chats we had.
The epilogue, you mean?
Sorry, epilogue. I'm not. Yes, gonna go back in time and put it before the rest of them. It can be
He's
a
had his mind scrambled by spreadsheet munging.
It could be the prologue to the fulfillment of Space Gits.
Yeah, it can be the prologue to the receipt of actual physical games from both of us because we haven't quite got to that point on our respective journeys.
Absolutely. The Space Gits Kickstarter should still be running when this video first goes live. It'll stay live long after the Space Gits Kickstarter has finished running.
But if you're watching in a year's time, check out the new Space Kids Kickstarter, which I'm sure I'm running.
Yes, but if you've just watching this video as it's just come out and you haven't yet backed Space Gits, please swing through there.
My children need wine.
Mike has just talked about how he is committed to fulfilling and producing and getting games out to every single backer, even if he has to personally email through a link to itch. So you're guaranteed of the finest of service should you go past here and back Space Gits. The link to it should be down in the show notes of this video, so do swing over and give it a back, give it some support, and swing by and follow and back and support our
It's not actually ring bound, it's hardbound.
But it's going to be a sort of hardback. Why, just out of curiosity, A5? It's then it's going to be A5 in the end?
Yeah, it'll be an A5 hardback. I just really like that size.
Okay.
And it started off as quite a smaller game, and A5 seemed like a lovely shape and size for it. And as it got longer, I was just like, yeah, sure. This is still like my envisaging of the game is still this. So yeah, it's a cute little turkey.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to go for a Min's game.
I mean, basically, in all things I just follow Sean Sutter, and he delivers lovely hardback A5 rulebooks. So I'm just gonna be more Sean.
Well, there you go. It's a man with a good visual sense to follow. So I'm sure it'll work out for the best. Yeah, swing down, into the link section, follow through, back, chat to us on Discord, punch the like and subscribes. Go to the comment section and tell us that you have backed Space Gits and you're very excited to receive it, and that you have backed Crawling Chaos. And why isn't Mike stuffing your
Where's my zine
into an envelope right now instead of chatting to me on this video? But for now, I think from this episode of Rule of Carnage, it's going to be a thank you and goodbye. So thank you and goodbye. Bye bye.
Goodbye now. Goodbye.